Well, hello and happy Monday to you. It is June 29th, and I have a great first-time guest on today's show from Families Over Billionaires. It's Kristen Crowell. This is the organization that our friend Maura Quint works for and with, and they are going on a big bus tour all of July, or half of July, and I had a great conversation with Kristen. She's the CEO of the organization, and it's a very important issue, of course, which is why we talk about it here on Stand Up. Important issues that affect you, your family, your community, your country, your planet. That's what we discuss, and Kristen is my guest today. Families Over Billionaires, and I think you're going to like it a lot. If you want to jump to that conversation, it starts at 37 minutes. But first, I've got a great clip show from the weekend and your headlines. Let's get to it. Thank you for being here. Can't do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic is the place to go to sign up for a paid subscription, or you can upgrade your subscription, pay more, and I am so grateful to all of those who do. And I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a great weekend. I pretty much wrapped up moving out of my apartment back into my house. Just a couple of things to get, a little bit more cleaning, but it feels real good to be out of there. Man, that was a interesting 2.5 years, a little over 2 years of my life, and I am very grateful for it. I'm grateful for you sticking with me through it, but I'm so happy to be back in my house and very excited about what could be next. Right now, what is next is your headlines. We will start in Venezuela, where there was a horrific earthquake. 50,000 missing after the earthquake, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Guardian says Venezuela in critical hours to find earthquake survivors as more search and rescue teams arrive. A father and a son was rescued after 4 days buried under the rubble of Venezuela's earthquake. Just an absolute nightmare in Venezuela right now. Also, it's going to be a hot week across the country. Dangerous and potentially record-setting heat wave to scorch millions this July 4th is the headline at CNN. There's what's called a heat dome forming. You can look into that and more. It would seem that the 60-day period of negotiation is hampered between U.S. and Iran by a war. They're fighting. We're fighting again. Iran said it struck U.S. military targets in Kuwait and Bahrain early Sunday following U.S. strikes on its coastal facilities. Kuwait's army said its air defenses were confronting hostile missile and drone attacks. Over the weekend, General Fatton also posted, U.S. aircraft just struck Iranian missile and drone storage locations and coastal radar sites for violating the ceasefire agreement again. It's very possible they will never learn. There may be coming to a point where we are no longer able to be reasonable and we'll be forced to militarily complete the job we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist. So he's threatening to wipe them off the face of the earth again. Their supreme leader said, the confessions and shameless pride of some of the leaders of the American enemy and Zionists in their crimes, which is definitely considered an admission of crime, has provided us the pretext to realize our violated rights in an appropriate manner. All right? Well, there you go. We're back at war. We're negotiating. There's a truce. There's a ceasefire. It's very hard to keep track of, but the violence continues. The war continues. The negotiations continue, I guess, too. Though here early Monday morning, the New York Times is reporting U.S. reaches deal with Iran to halt attacks. The agreement would allow vessels to move freely through the strait, a U.S. official said. Iran has not confirmed the deal, so who the hell knows? Who knows even what to say about the reporting? Reporting what the government officials are telling them, but they're not hearing from the other side, so it's hard to know what is what. Oil prices rise on possible deal to suspend attacks in the Gulf, so that's the thing that most people are focused on. We'll have another week of Supreme Court decisions. They won't be good. A lot of people looking at the decision to end the temporary protected status for hundreds of thousands of Haitians and Syrians. There's a tremendous amount of anguish and discussion around that, fear, concern. Sending people who've been living here for over 15 years in some cases, working, paying taxes back to countries that are very unsafe for them, for anyone really. Over the weekend, Hippo POTUS announced that the reflecting pool is doing fine and it's ready to be used and enjoyed, apparently. He had the 250th World's Fair, or whatever they're calling it there. It's been apparently a massive failure. Nobody's going. It's like this white Christian nationalist fair. One article writes, under a sweltering sun, attendance was sparse and power failures did not help. Visitors could look at a smaller scale model of Trump's proposed 250-foot triumphal arch, its vinyl covering stapled over a wood frame and emblazoned with the words, "One Nation Under God," had already begun to start buckling. Mother Jones reporter posted a video showing nobody at a Christian worship tent. Several people on social media also noted the Israeli flag at the fair that is supposed to be about celebrating America. David Byer with the conservative Cato Institute said all over the beautiful D.C. mall are random barriers and fences so tall you can't see over them. Hard to get around, and it's ugly. Nothing says Freedom 250 like miles and miles of hideous fences and barriers and soldiers. I guess that's what Trump likes. The fair also announced they were closed for several hours yesterday due to inclement weather, causing the tens of attendees to leave. The Great American State Fair also had to remove an image of a Confederate flag displayed in the state's pavilion on the National Mall. The state didn't put it up, but this is North Carolina, their pavilion. But at least one sponsor, Mount Olive Pickles, has had to pull out as a result. So there you go. And Vanilla Ice's show got canceled because of rain on Friday night. I don't know if it was going to be a show, if anybody was going to be there, but it didn't happen. Still time to catch it. You can head down there during the sweltering heat. Actually, I don't know when it's over, and I don't think anybody really wanted to go other than to take pictures and point and laugh. I think Bill B went over and did just that. We'll be hopefully talking to him this week. All right, those are the headlines I've gathered for you. Let's get to your clip show, shall we? Let's start with some fun and some humor brought to us by comedian and commentator Trey Crowder, who gives us a bit of a recap of what's happening. Always funny from the liberal redneck himself.
Well, the reflecting poll saga continues to worsen for the Trump administration, which is weird because everything else was going so swimmingly for them. In case you missed it, not long ago, out of the blue sky, Trump said publicly, "This is what I am going to do to the reflecting poll." And now the reflecting poll looks like shit. And MAGA said, "What has the left done to the reflecting poll?" And he tried to explain to him, no, this is because Trump gave a no-bid contract to a corrupt crony of his to accomplish a misguided and perhaps unachievable task. And they're like, no, this got Antifa written all over it. Okay. The crony in question, by the way, is, as far as I can tell, a Dick Tracy villain. How is everyone in Trump's circle a caricature? Like, the pool guy who turned the pool green is a cartoon gangster whose company is called Green Water Services. What the fuck is this timeline, y'all? At any rate, once word got out that the reflecting poll was all jacked up, people started going down there to point and laugh at it. They arrested some of those people, and now Trump and MAGA said, "See, we caught the vandals who sabotaged the reflecting poll." You're like, but those people were arrested way after the fact. I know, right? Returning to the scene of the crime. Shameless. I don't know what to say to these people because it's not like it should be hard to believe. This is right in Trump's wheelhouse. We all know that Donald Trump lives his life by an assortment of long-held philosophical tenets, age-old maxims whose wisdom is appreciated by all. You know, things like speak before you think, leap before you look, fuck measuring, measuring's gauge, just cut the damn thing, pussy. These adages have stood the test of time for a reason, y'all. Speaking of which, for years now in certain parts of the internet, people have called Donald Trump King Mirdus because everything he touches turns to shit. And that is true, but it's not some preternatural attribute of his. There's a very concrete reason for that, and this is another example of it. Donald Trump rushes headlong into any number of unnecessary and ill-founded misadventures whenever the hell he feels like it, regardless of the circumstances, and his followers call that assertive and strong, when in reality it is reckless and stupid. That's one of the reasons he appeals to them so much. They have that in common. Both Trump and MAGA refuse to understand that just because you don't like the way a thing is doesn't make it not be. Like, things are the way they are regardless of how you feel about them. Like, climate change is real. Billionaires are not your friends. Black people can play quarterback, all right? Like, Donald Trump was told repeatedly that it was not possible to renovate the reflecting pool in a cheap, simple, or timely fashion. But because he is who he is, he simply proclaimed that to not be the case, went ahead anyway, and now one of our nation's most iconic landmarks is a tepid swamp surrounded by razor wire. Happy birthday, America. Love y'all.
Yeah, great stuff as always from Trey Crowder. Now let's listen to the Democrats' Senate candidate in Texas. It's James Tallarico. This was Friday at Texas Democratic Convention, first full day, and thousands of people in the room. got to see this fun.
Lyle Lovett had a song called That's Right, You're Not From Texas. Come to think of it, he might have written it for Ken Paxton. There's a line in that song that I love. It goes, at a dance hall down in Texas, that's the finest place to be. The women, they all look beautiful, and their men will buy your beer for free. Every Texas bar has those regulars, the ones who pick up a round, the ones who check on the guy who's drinking alone, the ones who share a laugh or a story or their fried pickles. And every bar also has that one guy. He's loud, he's obnoxious, he makes all the women in the bar feel uncomfortable. He hears you say your name to the bartender and then adds his drink to your tab when you're not looking. That's Ken Paxton. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm done picking up his tab.
I don't know about y'all. All right. There it is. Tellerico on the campaign trail. Let's check out with the other big star in the Democratic Party, rising star. It's Jon Ossoff. There's a lot of rising stars, of course, obviously, but he was campaigning, of course, in Georgia.
I never want to hear these two pretend they give a damn about working people again. Because while hundreds of thousands of Georgians lose their health care, Mike Collins builds Trump a ballroom. They worked harder burying the Epstein files than they ever worked to lower your grocery bill. And while you pay more for everything, the Trumps are raking in billions from all over the world. Illegal tariffs, failed war, healthcare cuts, and unmatched corruption. 34% approval, and a presidential legacy cemented in disgrace.
Yeah, Jon Ossoff doing what he does very well. Very, very well. All right, let's listen to Paul Krugman, former New York Times columnist, Nobel Prize-winning economist, who does not like, I think it's fair to say, does not like Elon Musk. But more importantly, I feel like the way that he talks about him in this clip is accurate, and we should all feel this way, basically.
Musk is a horrible, terrible person, and has the blood of millions of children on his hands. Let's be clear. That's just yes, it's not something that has been proven, but it's close to. And there really is no. It's so overwhelmingly likely that it's clearly has to be true. And he's also a weak personality, very much like Trump. Again, he can't take criticism. He can't admit error. What does it say ultimately about our society that so many people are willing to throw money at this guy, and that they're so willing to forgive the incredible failures that he carried out, the incredible disaster of his time in a position of public responsibility? And I don't really know the answer to that. There's a real question about how it is we got at our current age of irresponsible oligarchs and with so little public backlash. And it's starting to develop, but still, the fact that Elon Musk is still in business, let alone the world's richest man, is in some sense an indictment of all of us.
Yes, indeed. Yes. All of that. I really liked it. And I will be repeating some version of that elsewhere. Elon Musk has blood on his hands, and we should never forget and never stop talking about and get some kind of justice, if not just to replace what he did to the federal government, rebuild it, make it better, take this tragedy and use it as an opportunity, especially with foreign aid and USAID specifically. Now let's check in with my friend Andrew Seidel. He's a lawyer, and he has been on the show many times. Dr. Will Judy is going to love this one and knows Andrew well. Con law attorney, activist, and author of The Founding Myth, Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American. He decided to weigh in on what Dan Patrick and other Christian nationalists said at the White House in the Oval Office while standing behind the Antichrist himself, which is ironic. Yeah, Trump was right there when Dan Patrick tried to continue to convince Americans that there is no separation of church and state. Andrew Seidel's got the fact check. It's real good. But here first, a little bit from Dan Patrick in the White House.
Separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. And from this day forward, that phrase should have no power over people of all faiths ever again in America.
Boy, do they desperately want there to be no such thing as the separation of church and state. They devoted an entire presidential commission, the Religious Liberty Commission, to trying to say there's no such thing as the separation of church and state. That's Dan Patrick, the head of the commission, trying to do that. The problem is, it does exist. Yeah, the phrase comes from an 1802 letter that was written by Thomas Jefferson, but the Supreme Court first adopted the metaphor in 1878, then again in 1947, then in 1948, then in 1961 three times, then in 1962, in 1963, in 1968, in 1973, in 1977, in 1982, and on and on and on. And this is a thing that exists. The Treaty of Tripoli says the United States was not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. It was negotiated under George Washington, signed by President Adams with the unanimous consent of the U.S. Senate. Our Constitution was the first to declare that power comes from the people, not gods, we the people. It's a godless Constitution, the first of its kind. It's the first to ban religious tests for public office, and then after all that, you still get the First Amendment, which separates church and state and guarantees religious freedom. There is the separation of church and state in this country. And the people who are desperately trying to tell you otherwise, like Dan Patrick here, are lying to you because that separation is the one thing that prevents them from imposing their personal religion on you and on your kids. And the worst part is, folks, it's that when we separate church and state, everybody wins. Everybody wins. That's why there is so much religious diversity and a flourishing religious diversity in the United States. It's because of the separation of church and state. This is a unique American invention, and on our 250th, it's something we can and should be proud of, and we should celebrate. And we shouldn't let people like Dan Patrick lie and undermine that legacy.
Yes, really good stuff from Andrew Seidel. So happy he's out there, and it's very important that we do everything we can to prevent that myth from continuing to spread to young folks that there's no separation of church and state in this country. And so there you have it. Let's now go to this debate over the future of the Democratic Party. Will they continue to head in the direction, I guess, of the left, which one might describe as affordability or more equity and opportunity, or will they stay more moderate Democrats and become like David Jolly, who is a former Republican running for Democrat now as a governor in Florida? And he was asked about it by a reporter on CNN over the weekend. We'll listen to what David Jolly says. Is there room? The one big tent?
Real test in Florida and beyond is going to be energizing the Democratic base, along with trying to get independents as well.
Sure.
And I just wonder, if you look at the so-called big tent of the Democratic Party, which does include the Democratic Socialists, if it means energizing that Democratic base, would you be comfortable campaigning with the Democratic Socialist wing of this party?
I think New York elected the wrong people. But I say that as a Floridian, as a Florida Democrat. I respect that New York gets to elect who they want to elect. Florida's going to elect who they want to elect. Look, we're a party that includes Gavin Newsom in California, Andy Beshear, Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, Senator Kelly. We have people who are within our party are representing their communities in very different ways. But the three values that I recognize we all share is that we're trying to get the economy to work for everyone. Government can do a little part to improve people's lives, and everybody's rights should be protected and their dignity celebrated, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship. Those are democratic principles, and the reason Democrats are getting elected is those are not Republican principles right now. They're not fighting to make sure the economy works for everyone. They're trying to attack government, and they're launching culture wars to divide people. That's why Democrats are winning statewide or nationwide.
But bottom line, you're not worried about this wing of the Democratic Party surging in the same way that we saw President Trump once in the wings of the Republican Party?
I disagree with this wing of the party. That's not who I am as a Democrat. But look at Republicans right now. They have people that tried to overthrow the government, that beat cops. The president pardoned those cops. They're engaged in outright grift and graft and outright corruption in Florida and in Washington. So you want to talk about a party that's having a hard family conversation. The Florida primary right now is like 4 snakes in a bag. You got Donald Trump's candidate, Ron DeSantis' lieutenant governor. You got the last Jeb Bush standing in the state, and you got Tucker Carlson's candidate. That's a party that's divided. At least Democrats are focused on improving people's lives. Republicans are fighting this culture war within their own organization that they can't figure out. Look, I disagree with many of the candidates that New York Democrats elected, but I'm a Florida Democrat. We do things differently down there.
Okay, well, we know that. But what is it specifically, David Jolly and other Democrats, that you disagree with? I am here for those policy disagreements. I want to hear what your policies are versus the Democratic Socialist policies that you vehemently or slightly disagree with, or that you can't work with each other on. I'm very interested in how this is going to play out. And so here is Mayor Mamdani. He was on ABC's This Week with a very interesting, as always, interview with Jonathan Karl. Here is a clip.
There was also a take, it's not just Democrats. You've probably heard what President Trump had to say about you and about the candidates you supported. And he warned that if socialists win, and he calls you communists, but you will start living in squalor. There'll be no food, no housing, no military, no law and order. There'll be nothing. And he had a few other choice words. By the way, he also said he still likes you. But what do you make of what he? I mean, the Republicans are going to make you the poster child for the Democratic Party.
Let them. We don't have to ask ourselves what life looks like if a socialist wins. I won last November, and over the course of these last 6 months, what we've delivered for working people are the very things we were told were impossible. We've delivered free childcare for 2-year-olds for the first time in New York City history. We've delivered tens of millions of dollars back to tenants who were taken advantage of by bad landlords. We've delivered 165,000 potholes being paved. And we've done all of these things while also delivering the lowest recorded crime in our city's history. That's what it looks like to have democratic socialism. And what you're seeing is that New Yorkers experienced this for 6 months and made the decision that they wanted to see more of it on the national stage as well.
Okay, how about that? Thought that was pretty good. And now let's listen to a Congresswoman, Democrat. It's Melanie Stansberry, staying on the case for the Epstein victims and survivors, and against Todd Blanche, who is going to make an attempt to be confirmed as Attorney General. That's going to be a close call.
Well, I think it's very clear that Todd Blanche is the front man in this cover-up, and we learned through the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that the vice president himself has been convening meetings to help cover up this case, and we know that others in the administration have been meeting regularly to try to shield the president from accountability in the Epstein case. So I'm not hopeful that this administration is going to take decisive prosecutorial action in this case, but what I do know is that in a few months there's a midterm election, and when we take back the House, when Chairman Garcia is sitting in the seat, we will be subpoenaing all of these witnesses, including the administration witnesses, and we will be holding all of them accountable.
That is the reason why elections matter, and that is the reason why we desperately need Democrats to win in November. Well done, Congresswoman. Stay on the case. And now let's talk about the TPS decision Supreme Court made about temporary protection status and what it means for Haitians who live in different communities across the country, who are amazing people. If you know any folks that have come here from Haiti, they are really, I don't know, I'm generalizing, of course, about a group of people, but I've met and lived around lots of Haitian folks and worked with, most importantly, Haitian people at the different number of jobs I had at Disney World, at Equinox in New York City, and other places in New York City. Hardworking, kind people, and loved them. And so hate to see what is happening here, of course, with the threat to send them back to Haiti. Here is James McGovern, one of my favorite congressmen. He's from Massachusetts, and I like him a lot. When people are critical of Democrats, I say that's fine. I'm critical of Democrats too, but let's be clear, there's a lot of really good ones, and I would put James McGovern up with anybody.
I have to tell you, I am so angry. I am so pissed off that we have to be here today. Today's ruling is harmful, it is ridiculous, and it is just plain cruel. I mean, Trump chose to end these protections as part of his war on legal immigration, and the Supreme Court just rubber stamped it. What the hell is wrong with these people? How cruel can you be? I'm ashamed of this government. I'm ashamed of this court. You know, people all over the world look to the United States with hope that we will stand up and we will defend human rights, right? That is what people think of when they think of the United States. That's their hope, that we will be a defender of human rights. But because of what Trump did, and because of what this court did, we are no longer regarded as a defender of human rights, but an abuser of human rights. Look, at Haiti is not a safe place to return. We all know that. The State Department has said that. And I just want to point out one other thing. Your TPS holders contribute almost $6 billion to our economy every year and pay $1.5 billion in taxes. That's $1.5 billion more than the trillionaire Elon Musk pays in taxes. The bottom line is our whole country benefits from Haitians and all TPS holders. The final thing I'm going to say is we're going to fight. We're going to fight like hell. Here's the message to Trump, and here's the message to the people in the Supreme Court. We're not going away. We're going to fight you bastards with every ounce of energy we have, and we're going to win.
Yeah, I like the fire. I like it from James McGovern. Always great. Now let's listen to Haitian American who's been here for a while. He's, I believe, a reverend in Ohio. His name is Vilas Dorfinville, and he was on MS Now.
By the Supreme Court's ruling yesterday. I want you to hear from one Haitian with TPS, Vilas Dorfinville. He's a community leader here, about how he was blindsided by yesterday's decision.
It seems that I was greatly mistaken to see how folks who would keep the president accountable, how they side with him on everything that he says or everything that he does, which means there is no check and balance. The president has that freeway in front of him to do whatever he wants to do, unfortunately. And most of the time,
very well said by Vilas Dorfinville there on MS Now. I'm glad they talked to him and to get to share that with you. Also in that segment, they brought on a reverend there in Ohio. Of course, Christian organizations have been the primary organizations that resettled refugees and take in folks that are escaping all kinds of harms from their countries. And so Carl Ruby is one of those guys in Ohio, and he was on that MS Now segment as well, so I thought I would share what he had to say.
I also am wondering if you can spell out the stakes here. Justice Sonia Sotomayor said in her dissent, more people will die. The State Department tells Americans they shouldn't go to Haiti because of how dangerous conditions there are on the ground. And then you have Stephen Miller saying, well, it's fine for Haitians. They can go back.
Yeah, I was sitting with Vilas yesterday when the news of the court decision came in. There were other Haitians in the room. Several began weeping. I was shocked. I anticipated, especially in light of the dig motion that was filed a week ago, showing that the State Department initially advised extending TPS and showing that the State Department told Homeland Security it's not safe. I thought the court would somehow take that into account. And I was shocked and extremely disappointed that they didn't.
What did you make, Reverend, of the fact that the court also basically sent the signal that they don't care about the history of racial remarks that this administration has made about Haitians, not just the president, the vice president, former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. I mean, there was a mountain of evidence, according to attorneys and experts who had been following this case, and it just didn't appear then to be relevant.
I feel betrayed by my country, and for the first time in my life, I'm ashamed of things that are currently unfolding, and you know, I'm a hopeful person. I'm a person of faith. I believe in the gospel. I believe that we're in a story that ends well. But the Bible also teaches us that it's a story where we suffer and where we have to be faithful and where leaders will disappoint us. And if you read the prophets of the Old Testament, one of the main things that they confronted was injustice leveled at immigrants. So you can't read the Bible. You can't read the words of Christ without knowing that we have a commitment to stand with our Haitian brothers and sisters in Christ right now.
Yeah, there's
even
the
though
Christian
our government
argument
hasn't.
that I think makes a lot more sense. Sounds a lot more Christ-like to me. All right. Well, let me just go right back to Jon Ossoff. I need to feel a little bit better. He makes me feel better. Senator Ossoff, one more time from you, please.
You did that, Savannah. And last week, when they gathered in Atlanta to remove black elected officials from office, not by defeating them at the polls, but by manipulating maps to dilute minority power, they saw you mobilize, Savannah, and they backed down in fear of your power. Savannah, a wave is building. The kind of wave that comes once a generation, when people have been pushed too far and they decide all at once, all together, that enough is enough. We have the power not just to restore checks and balances, but to rebuke these abuses of power with such power and decision that no president dares try anything like this again for a century. So, Savannah, let's give them a united Georgia. And let's make sure they hear it all the way down at Mar-a-Lago, that Georgia will bow to no king.
There you go. Jon Ossoff on the campaign trail doing great work, in my opinion. And now here, Graham Plattner is on the campaign trail in Maine over the weekend, and he's polling, by the way, just ahead of Susan Collins, at least in a couple of polls I saw, which is interesting. Nonetheless, I wanted to play this because I thought he does a pretty good job laying out his principles and policy proposal, which sound a lot like Mayor Mamdani's and the Democratic Socialist platform, even though I don't believe he identifies as that.
We need Medicare for all in this country, universal health care. We need universal child care. We need high-quality public education going all the way through higher ed and trade schools. We need a tax code that goes after the wealth from those who have stolen and hoarded it. Today, we have a tax code in which wages are taxed at a higher rate than wealth. That is a simple math equation you can run to the end and figure out who wins. We have a system in which we deregulated the financial banks, got rid of Glass-Steagall, legalized stock buybacks, created a world in which we created immense amounts of public money using public debt and gave it to people who've done nothing but speculate with it.
There you go. By the way, there were long applauses at some of these campaign speeches because in the room it resonates, but it doesn't on the clip show for me. So sometimes I cut the applauses a little bit, as I just did with Graham Plattner and did with one of the Ossoff clips as well. So sometimes it's just really long and I just get impatient. Like, you get to the next thing. I'm not in your audience. I'm listening on a podcast and I've got the ability to edit you. So every once in a while I do that. Want to mention that behind the scenes a little for you. Okay, I like to start and end with comedy whenever possible, and J.L. Covan does the best impression of Trump anywhere in the world, but not only is the impression great, it's the content. It's what he says, and I really like this one. And by the way, did you know that at Trump's Great American Fair, a cow named Melania was paraded around? Apparently she has, the cow has a resemblance to Melania. That's the headline in Irish Star, Washington Post. Cow named Melania appears at the Great American State Fair. Hilarious. Anyway, here's JL doing Trump, talking about this dumb failure of a state fair, and I giggled a lot when I saw this.
So the fake news, the lying fake news media, and radical left trash somehow I don't think they speak English too good. This is why we should probably deport some of these people as well. They don't talk good words in American, which of course I know all the big words in our great patriotic language, but everybody's saying, oh, the Great American State Fair is a flop. I don't know anything about that. I was not part of that. It's, if people want to celebrate their country, these fat people and these people celebrating our great flag, they can do that. That's a great thing about our country, but I have nothing to do with that. No, what happened? Excuse me. I'll tell you what happened. Now, if you'd shut up, I can tell you what happened. Now, you want to keep talking? Get them out. It's my wife, Melba Toast, is very attractive, even though she's, I don't know how old she is, but she's definitely over 50, which is not too good, but she still looks great, okay? And she just has, despite her genius visa, okay, which is actually, she thought it was a credit card that she was getting. I said, no, it's even better, darling. It means you can stay in this country despite contributing nothing and not knowing the language or the culture, because you are hot and you are white and you're with me. And she just looked at me and said, but no credit card? And I said, darling, go in the other room, thank you. So she's never really been good at speaking or talking good American word language. And so I told her, because I'm very honest, I said, darling, as president, I have to go on a 50-state affair, which means I get to have sex with women in all 50 states as president. I learned that from, it's called prima nocta. They do it in Braveheart, which is, of course, a great movie from non-racist, non-anti-Semite gun owner, which we helped him get back, by the way. We had to fire some people, but we got him his gun back. Debbie Gibson. So I told her that, and she told people we should have a great American state fair. Because it's like the worst game of telephone. It's like, I pay you to do other things with your mouth, darling, not talk. And so now there's this rumor that I have something to do with the state fair. No, I'm going through 50 states having strong patriotic affairs with hot patriots. As a Christian who doesn't go to church, should, by the way. Even on Sundays we do it because we respect our Christian faith so strongly. So whatever's going on at the Washington Mall, by the way, no stores at the mall, so whoever called it a mall is dumb as bricks and should probably be shot. But no, I'm having affairs very strongly. Melatonin is stupid.
There you go. J.L. Govan. I love him, and it's been way too long since he's been on the show. I've asked him twice, and he couldn't do it. But he said, the very next time you ask me, I promise I'm there. So hopefully this week. All right, now joining me is the executive director of Families Over Billionaires. She has 25 years of experience in progressive movement. She was the founding executive director of the State Revenue Alliance, where she led a team to support state campaign infrastructure across 30 states and over 280 state-based partners. She also helped Massachusetts win a Millionaire's tax in the November 2022 ballot, which resulted in over $2 billion annually in new investments. She's done a lot more than that, and very impressive, very smart. I hope she runs for office at some point. Mara Quint works with this organization. They're about to go out on a bus tour. We mentioned the dates. Hopefully I'll be at the first one in Croton here in New York this week. Maybe I'll see you there, but Mara is probably going to be at several of these dates. You can get to meet her as well. But from Families Over Billionaires, very impressive executive director, it's Kristen Crowell with a great conversation. Okay, very excited to be live with a brand new guest who hasn't been here before, but she is the executive director of a very important organization doing really great work with a fun announcement because they're going on tour, the bus tour. We heard about this from Mara Quint, who works with this organization, our good friend last week, I think it was, or at the beginning of this week. But now I'm very excited to be joined by the executive director of Families Over Billionaires. It's Kristen Crowell. Thank you, Kristen, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You, before I get into the organization, just a little bit about you in that you've been involved with and led several successful initiatives and campaigns over your almost 20-year career, starting with like school reform, and you helped Massachusetts get a wealth tax. You have accomplished a great deal. And I kind of want to just ask you, like, what drives you and what has been driving you all these years? Like, why do you particularly do this work? What got you into it?
Well, I didn't know when I was so this goes back to 20 plus years ago. I was a single mom, young kids in the public schools. And it really just started out with budget cuts at the school district. And I went down and started raising some hell and organizing some other parents. And really, that was the first time that I understood that budgets, we don't have to just accept budget cuts and cuts to the programs that our families and communities rely on, and really started getting curious and kind of obsessed, honestly, with the tax code, which is super wonky. I am not a policy expert. I'm just a lady. I come to this as somebody who wants every kid, every family to have what they need to build a normal, middle class, successful life. And once I started becoming obsessed about the tax code, you start really seeing how government spends our money. And it's our money. It's money that we pay in as taxpayers. And it's become an obsession. And it is currently an unfair system. And it has been the work that I have been, again, it's like I can't describe it any other way. They're just obsessed with making things right. And Massachusetts in 2022, I led a ballot campaign that asked millionaires in Massachusetts to pay 4 extra cents on every dollar they earned over $1 million. So we're talking about pennies. And what that has done for the state budget is generated now billions of dollars that is going into public goods like education and transportation and things that everyone relies on just to get by in life. So it works. That's the other message that I have is we can actually do great things if we make the tax code work for working people.
That is so boring to talk about.
I know, tax policy, womp womp.
I've been talking about tax policy. Like, it's the example I use to talk about my work and my career, which is like, I try to talk about important issues that impact people's lives in a way that keeps them interested. Working at The Daily Show and Colbert and with John Oliver, and using humor and personality however you can, but also just talking about it differently and trying to position it in people's lives and center it in people's lives in a way that keeps them from punching out, especially in a 5-second scroll world. But this is pretty much one of the most important issues. It affects your life in so many ways, the tax code, and people have very little understanding over it. And it's so easy to demonize and demagogue any idea that could be a tax. But when you say something like taxing 4 cents on every dollar they make over $1 million, it helps to illustrate the fact that there are different amounts of money, percentages of money that you get taxed on every different bracket. That's how progressive income tax structures work. It's how pretty much every country in the world does it, but we make a huge exception here and therefore leave trillions of dollars on the table. But people think, oh, you're taxing me 95% on making $100 million. Well, then now I've only got $5 million. I'm like, no, that's not how anything works. And but now I've bored everybody. That's my problem.
Well, and I think in the work that I've been doing as an organizer, it's really important. I mean, tax policy is the wonkiest. It has more 4 or 5 syllable words. Who the hell knows what that means?
Right.
And what we've experienced in the work that I've been doing is everyone understands this concept. They believe the system's rigged. They know they go to work, they live by the rules, and they are paying more in taxes than the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations that are getting handouts. They get that. We don't have to use tax policy wonky language to speak to someone's lived experience with what it means to be in in this country right now. The system's rigged, they know it. And if you create organizing opportunities and spaces for them to work together to fight back against this, they are lining up in droves. And this isn't just about what we're seeing is also, this is not just a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is 80-90% of our country believe that we should have a fair tax code, believe that the billionaires should pay more. And that's what's at stake right now.
So believing a thing doesn't mean you actually do anything. That's the problem, right? When we say those kinds of polling questions, like 80% of people believe there should be controls on guns. 90% of people believe that we are in a climate crisis and we need to do something. In this case, the vast majority of people believe that. But how do you get them to actually do anything? You've spent your career organizing, creating, as you said, a space for organizing. You're now going on a bus tour, Families Over Billionaires, with our friend Mara Quint, who's the smartest, funniest, most passionate person I know, is going to be on some of those stops, and of course why we know about it. But this is what you mean, I think, by creating space and organization, this bus tour, this organization. How do you get people to join you and actually do something rather than just give you their opinion? Oh, I agree with you, but yeah, what are you going to do? How do you activate people? I will follow you anywhere, Kristen. Tell me what to do.
Well, number one, we have to understand that politicians in Washington, D.C. aren't going to just do this because the polls say it's the smart thing to do.
Right.
They are not, and it doesn't mean they're not necessarily bad. Some are horrible. It doesn't mean everyone's bad. It just means we have to create the conditions and pressure them to be accountable to their constituents. So number one, we have to believe that we have more power and agency over what gets done in Washington, D.C. than politicians want you to believe. And that means we have to create on the ground presence day in and day out to make sure they are hearing from their voters that they expect action, that it's not a please do this on behalf of us. It is an expectation that we need to create, that politicians better work for us or we're going to fire them. And 1 year ago, and the bus tour is only one of the many things that we at Families Over Billionaires and our hundreds of partners are engaged in day in and day out. But it is also about creating a public presence that puts folks on notice and calls them out and names the things that when you pass policies that hurt our families, we're not going to roll over and take it anymore. We're going to get mad, we're going to get loud, and we're going to get in the streets, and we're going to demand you work for us. And that is a lot about what we spend our time doing.
The thing about the work that you've been doing, and to some extent I've been involved with, let's call it the progressive movement, activism, organizing, all of it, is that we're all kind of in competition with each other for the issues that we might care about the most, from gun control to climate to women's reproductive rights to LGBT rights, the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think probably one of the most popular movements progressives have been involved in over the past few years, obviously, has been the, quote, pro-democracy movement. Save our democracy before we do anything. We got to do that. I feel like this issue is one that kind of encompasses all of it, because you can't get any of those things done without the resources and money that you need to prop up the organizations that can actually get results. And I also feel like the kind of legislative proposals that you and other organizations make are very palatable and very doable, though someone might argue that they'll always get around having to pay because of loopholes and so on. Answer any question you want coming out of the progressive competition for attention and resources to the fact that Families Over Billionaires and your partners should get that attention and support.
The reason I like competing in the arena of the tax code is it's because it impacts every single thing you care about.
Yeah.
If you want more affordable housing, if you want healthcare to be affordable, you want to fix Medicaid, if you want to tackle the climate crisis, if you want fair elections, somebody has to pay for that. And that's why we have government.
Healthcare.
Government has, we fund government to impact our lives on every single issue that folks care about. So we have spent, Families Over Billionaires, we have a broad tent. It is not just the tax people or the policy wonks that are in this arena with us. On the bus tour, we're partnering with a organization, Gen Z for Change, and they are organizing young people around a variety of issues that touch the younger generation. And tax is a number one priority for them because they understand if we don't have the money, we can never get the nice things. We can never pay for childcare, healthcare, climate, democracy. And it's why I love this arena, because it allows us to connect to every single other issue in a tangible way, not just a symbolic narrative way. But if we win, we get stuff done, we pay for things, we improve people's lives.
Absolutely.
It's simple.
Yeah. I want to know more about that Gen Z organization and what's working for them to fight the apathy and get young folks engaged. I have 18 and 21-year-old daughters, and my perception is they're not nearly as engaged. Not my daughters, they're pretty engaged, but a lot of their friends and peers, as I would think they would be. But that's a sample size of me and means nothing.
I have 5 kids too, so in a variety of age ranges.
Oh, why do you have 5 kids? I'm joking.
Why?
I'm sorry, that was the question I wanted to
I
ask,
am
but it came out.
pro-choice,
I'm sorry.
I promise.
I'm so sorry. That's none of my business. Anytime anybody has more than 2, I'm like, oh, why? How did that happen?
That's a choice you made. Interesting.
So, but I think this is such an important point to talk about. And I want to just debunk a couple of kind of myths or things people think. I think the most reasonable argument against higher taxes is that I don't trust that government is going to do the right thing. And I could argue there are certain governments, including the government of my town where I live, Clarkstown, run by Republicans who I think do the wrong thing with taxpayer money, though they do still do a lot of the right things, and the trains run on time and the parks are clean and it's the safest community around. That being said, the cops are overpaid. That being said, how do you answer that when people say, listen, I'm not against taxing billionaires. I'm for taxing everybody. And they might even agree with you on the percentages and so on. But what I have a problem with is that you think that government is responsible to do the right thing with that money. Well, how do you generally take that? That's the most reasonable. The next few will get far less reasonable. But
Sure. And we're at historic levels of cynicism that government can deliver for us. So like it's not countercultural to say government isn't working. And so I think there's two pieces, is that we can't, in the moment that we're in, and we've seen the government be so destructive, and I'm singling out the federal government, so destructive to basic norms and basic programs that millions of people rely on. It's not enough anymore to say, well, we're going to just go back to normal, because normal didn't work either. So we have to have a new mindset that people who get elected have to be, one, they have to commit to doing things, and then it's actually solvable. I mean, I think that's one of the mindsets that it's why I really admire what the Mondami administration is doing in such a short amount of time. Is it's not just saying we are going to deliver on the promise of free childcare. It's then you get in office and you have to do it. And if elected officials and the current or the status quo politicians aren't interested in the governing part of the agenda or doing the thing, we need to fire them. And we need to say, this is our country, it is our money, and we need to elect people that come from an understanding of how programs can impact real people's lives. And so it's not easy right now. And I will completely admit that, because there is so much cynicism. Yeah. But if we aren't the ones to take this on, if we are not putting ourselves in the driver's seat of these decisions, then we are letting them do this to us. And I have seen more, I mean, it's kind of a beautiful thing. And this is this bus tour that we're embarking on. It's our second one. I was on the road a year ago for nearly 10 weeks, and we went to 19 states, had town hall meetings in all of them, got to see different corners of the country, different political persuasions, different geographies, big cities, rural towns. People are fed up, and I think we collectively realize, if we don't take responsibility for us, good things aren't just going to happen because we hope they happen. And we are seeing more activism, more engagement, more people stepping up and running for office, local and state level, in Congress. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's not enough to sit home and complain.
Yeah.
It's like, we actually have to take responsibility.
Yeah,
and if we don't, they're profiting off of our complacency.
Oh,
period.
Every
Full
time.
stop.
I feel like people don't realize that last point enough. Like, if we don't, someone else will. I mean, someone's going to fill the space, take the money, in this case, for themselves. And that's so often what Republicans do in local government. I mean, forget about the federal government. Like, in the local government, the Republicans run for office to get those government contracts and give them to their developer friends or whatever industry that they're in, and everybody wins in that case. That's not good government. And that's
everybody at the top wins. And working
they and their friends. I'm sorry.
Everyone at the top wins.
Yes,
and the rest
we
of us
all
get
lose.
screwed.
Excuse me. Most of us lose because you gave your contract to a friend and they've never put a liner in a pool before because they're a pavement guy.
The one thing that is amazing to watch right now, specifically at the local level, is the organic outrage and an organizing that's being done around the data centers. Talk about like local municipalities.
Nobody wants a data center. Nobody.
And they shouldn't. It's like the worst thing possible to have one.
Oh, I want one badly. I desperately want a data center because I can't improv on
You
this.
want your utility bills to go up and not to flush your toilet.
I love a windowless
and to
building.
Get brown water running
I love
out
a
of your
windowless
tap.
building.
Right.
That makes a buzzing sound.
Right.
I think
that
that
doesn't create any jobs, doesn't add any value. Oh, and by the way, it's going to probably relocate or kick out local agriculture and local community farmers. So it's a great deal for communities.
What is that? How active, like, what is going on with that? You're about to make the point, I interrupted you, but the bottom line is nobody likes this thing, and this thing is being introduced in different towns and states, and what it is doing, and I think we should all leverage this, it's bringing people into the same room and together on a campaign to work together that generally might even hate each other.
Right.
You know?
Or just believe that they're on different sides of things.
Yeah, but
right. That we believe, but here we are.
In the end, like local politics, to some extent, like I don't know how to like message this with my liberal progressive home owning friends, but in the end, you really only care about your home value, don't you? That's really what you care about. Even if you're like this liberal progressive supportive of this or that cause, in the end, it's the thing that brings you to vote locally is what's going to happen in your community to your home value. And that's not cynicism. I'm talking about my liberal progressive homeowning friends that don't sometimes get active if they're not directly affected.
Well, and here's it's the biggest asset that middle class people have.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that we have. We don't have giant stock portfolios that are turning over and making $1 million a day without any work. It is the one piece of an asset that it should appreciate. It is, I don't know, I'm 50, almost 51. That was the thing we were all taught. The smartest thing you can do is go buy a house and build equity. So I get why there's a deep attachment to our property value, because that's our asset. That's our future.
Well,
that's
it's
our
funny.
retirement.
You hit upon my privileged chip on my shoulder, which is that I bought a home. My ex-wife and I bought a home for $456,000 in 2007, right outside New York City. We were going to flip it in 3 to 5 years. We were positive that this, of all communities in the world, would gain value. Outside New York, the suburbs of New York City have never, ever gone down, ever in value. We turned the key and the housing bubble burst, and from that point on, I've had this chip on my shoulders, particularly against the financial industry, but of course, when it comes to tax and tax policy, and specifically, I make money on the work that I do.
Right.
The actual labor that
We
I
go
have
to work. We have to put in our time.
Yeah.
We physically are working.
And this is hard to sit straight up in an air-conditioned room in front of a microphone and look this handsome and say these things. What do you say to the other complaint that a lot of people have, which is, why are you punishing success? Why do you believe in punishing success? And I think my answer is usually, it has nothing to do with that. I'm talking about people specifically, in fact, that make the kinds of money that nobody could possibly create, that kind of labor, that outcome. They're depending on lots of other people, and they're not getting punished at all. All they're doing is reaping rewards. But how do you generally answer that?
Well, right now, the billionaire class is paying less in taxes, a percent of their income, than working people. So if the nurse and the firefighter are paying more of their money in taxes, and we are consistently giving away tax breaks to rich people. This last, the one big ugly bill that was passed, the Republicans' budget last year, gave over $1 trillion in tax cuts to the ultra wealthy, people that don't need more money. And frankly, it's our tax dollars. We paid money for Washington, D.C. to take that money and give it to rich people. It's like, it's not about punishing them. It's like the way it's set up, it's punishing working people. And all we are saying is they should just pay the same rate as a nurse, a firefighter, a teacher, somebody that punches a clock, works a factory line, is actually getting up and doing and working honestly for a living. That's all we're asking for. Just pay your fair share like the rest of us, and then we would be able to have the funds for nice things. It's because they're grifting off of our work. That's what this is about. They're grifting off of our work. And then whining about how we're punishing their success. It's like, that is not the truth about what's happening. The truth is you're profiting off of our work and whining about it. Whining about your billions. Like, cry me a river. Like, me a river.
Yeah, and they won't. And if they do, they'll charge for it if you want to do anything on that river. But I am going to push back.
They'll put a data center on the river and extract everything they can out of it. That's what will happen.
All of the water, it'll no longer be a river. It'll just be a path now, a dry path.
That's right.
You said they're the reason we can't have nice things. I would push back on that and say, it's not nice things. We're not even asking for nice things. We're asking for some basic, fundamental, not only rights, but I think about healthcare the most, because this is an issue that you can get a lot of middle class or upper middle class people to realize is an issue. And you look around the world and you realize they have a nice thing, and it doesn't cost them that much money. I mean, I'm just bombarded with examples from places from Switzerland to Canada, especially, where people talk. They don't have to be worried about whether or not they should call the ambulance. Can I afford the ambulance? Can I afford to give birth? Those aren't nice things necessarily. Those are like, I'm going to die things if I don't get them. But you also have people, would say, well, you want to tax the job. These are people who create jobs, Kristen. If you tax them too much, they won't create those jobs here anymore. They'll go somewhere else and create those jobs.
Well, I think this is one of the most encouraging things of doing this tax work for nearly 20 years is that the public doesn't buy that anymore.
They don't?
They know trickle down economics. They're like, we call BS. We know that's a lie. We know the job creators aren't creating jobs. With the emerging AI jobs, they know like white collar jobs are going to go away while these companies get big tax breaks. They enrich themselves. The CEO pays are out of control. It's not a little bit of greed. It's greed on a scale that is harmful.
Yeah, the white collar jobs are going to be beat out a lot by AI, and the white collar folks are going to learn what blue collar folks have known for 2 generations.
Right, which they're disposable. They are disposable worker. If you are punching a clock to a company, you're disposable. And I think the great myths that they have sold to make us feel bad about, we'll move, or in Massachusetts, we heard it constantly. Well, the millionaires are just going to move. And guess what? 3 years later, 4 years later, they haven't moved. In fact, some millionaires and corporations have moved into Massachusetts. You know why? Because they have good infrastructure. They want an educated workforce. They want good public transport. They rely on the public good to do their business and operate their they rely on this. So it's just, and I think we've all kind of woken up to the fact that like, you can lie all you want, that's BS, and we're taking you on. And we see this, we see this in our town halls all across the country. This is not liberal Democrats showing up by themselves. This is across the political spectrum. These are folks that voted for Donald Trump multiple times, showing up in town hall meetings and saying, they lied to us, stole our money, cut our health care, kicked our kids in our community off food assistance, and we're done. Never again will we believe the lies that they give a damn about our families. And I think this is like we are on the precipice, I believe, on great possibility. If we all learn to stick together, to organize and make demands, and then put ourselves in leadership roles, we can change this country fundamentally for better. I am a absolute optimist right now about what is possible.
See, that's the thing. I think that it's really important to listen to someone like yourself who has been through the barrel for a long time, has worked on several different campaigns, who has been involved in politics. And if you're not cynical and beaten down
Not at
and
all.
wanting to quit, and you're on the opposite, you're optimistic and you think that this is a really huge opportunity, then those of us who haven't been involved as much as you should maybe like take a seat and listen and participate, and instead of being embittered or disgruntled or cynical, because if you aren't, how can I be? I think it's maybe a perspective a lot more of us hopefully can take from hearing you. Have you thought of running for office?
I'm not currently, no. I don't. I like being on the outside.
I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, I also think we need more young people in office. I mean, you look at Washington, D.C., and I'm like, we
You're
actually
a spring
need
chicken
the
compared
young,
to...
well, but that's a sad state of affairs.
It is.
Right? If you are 80 years old running for re-election, why don't you want to retire? We need to pass the torch to younger generations that are in the trenches and experiencing these things, because it's people's real experience with how government interacts with them that should be shaping our policy decisions.
Yes.
And again, I would say the bus tour, can I just share a little bit?
Absolutely, I hope to stop by on one of these.
I don't want your listeners to think that I'm just like a delusional lunatic. The reason that I'm so hopeful is because we have been out. Like I said, we have been out on the road. Last year, we traveled 22,000 miles from New York to California. This bus tour kicks off Tuesday night in Portland, Maine, and we are going from Maine to Arizona. And again, all different communities along the way, big cities, rural
Portland,
communities.
Manchester, New Hampshire, Croton-on-Hudson, New York, which I hope to be at, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Warren, Michigan, Flint, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, Racine, Wisconsin, Janesville, Wisconsin, La Crosse, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or Waterloo, Iowa, Davenport, Iowa, 3 stops in Iowa, a lot of listeners out there, Omaha, Nebraska, Denver, Colorado, Phoenix, and Tucson throughout July. You guys will be. Why did you pick the places that you picked?
These are places where many of them are places where Republican members of Congress betrayed their constituents. They voted to kick kids off food assistance. They voted to decimate the health care. And last year when we were on the road, it was before the bill became law.
Right.
And we were making the phone calls. People were calling members of Congress. They were begging to be heard. And many of the Republican members of Congress never showed up to do a town hall. And they would lie in the press and say, oh, we'll never cut Medicaid. No, we would never.
Yes, right here in New York 17, Mike Lawler.
Mike Lawler, he said it many times.
Yeah. We almost had a riot at one of his town halls as a result of just that. Yeah.
I'll never cut Medicare or Medicaid or Medicare. And then they turned around and betrayed everyone. So part of this is we're intentionally going to be on the ground right when we are hitting the 1-year anniversary of the passage of the One Ugly Law. And now we can quantify the harms. We know that in the last 12 months, 800,000 children no longer have food assistance. So, last year when I was out, our opponents or someone on the other side would say, or the press would say, isn't this just hyperbolic? Aren't you just like chicken with your head cut off? It can't possibly be this bad. 20 million people aren't going to lose healthcare. We are now a year in and we can say, we're not crazy. This is what they did to us. And the other piece this is why I'm so hopeful. When we are in the town hall setting, people are coming forward and sharing very personal things about how this is impacting their lives, things that reveal their vulnerabilities. And it is galvanizing a community to say, okay, we are going to take care of one another. We're going to stand up together. We're not going to let families go without. We've seen organic mutual aid drives, food drives. Some of our stops along the route are partnering with local food pantries and local community groups to say, if our government and this administration led by Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress are going to betray us, then we're going to take care of each other. We're going to do 2 things. We're going to take care of each other, and then we're going to make it political, and we're going to go after them, because never again are we going to allow the lies to be believed. And I think this is the dawn of something very different than the political fabric of our country. We understand that it benefits rich people and billionaires and corporations to be pitted against one another. That is something we are seeing shift at the community level. People don't ask anymore, well, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? They say, how can we work together? And, again, Washington wants to pit us against each other. They want us to hate each other because if we're fighting against each other, we cannot look upstream and see, they're all coming for us. All the rich people are coming for us.
You say Washington, I would add to that every time media. So the biggest channels on YouTube, podcasts, everywhere are the most divisive. And
it gets clickbait,
right? Well, yeah, and that includes every progressive now. Like, put the thumbnail on. Pete Dominic destroys executive director of Families Over Billionaires, and people click on it. And so it's not just Washington, the electeds who are in power.
Sure.
It's especially media. That's how you make money. That's how you build a following, is to be outrageous as opposed to have a thoughtful, nuanced conversation about real things that affect people's lives. And that's what you're saying, that when people's lives are affected materially, they tend to pay more attention. They tend to wake up and so on. And I do have to ask you to just give me your opinion, your take, because you have been traveling around, because you're a professional communicator on this issue. Is anything changing based on the fact that Donald Trump and his minions have cut so much of government and actual real people's lives that they might be benefiting from? You mentioned a couple of things, healthcare and SNAP, but I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily affected by that. But the one thing that I wonder about is, do they see him putting gold everywhere and wanting to build a ballroom? Do they not see do the people who love the Trump cult, do they not see that he doesn't care about
Yes.
them yet?
That's shifted. Yes. There is.
Make the case.
I mean, and last year we knocked. We went and visited nearly 200,000 people's homes to just ask what they think, and polling, say what you want, but door-to-door conversations is what I believe is really valid.
Yeah.
There is a big slice of people that voted for Donald Trump that are they don't believe it anymore. They voted for him because he said he would make life more affordable. He would not enter into a war with Iran, that he cared about their families. And now he scapegoated different communities, immigrant communities in particular, in order to make that case. And which is again,
convincing.
I don't want to speak for Republicans writ large, but the folks that we are engaging with and see at our town halls who voted for him, they're like, we now get it. That guy lied to us. He's made money off of us.
Well, he said he was just going to deport the bad immigrants, but he just deported all of the guys who milk my cows. They're all good guys.
I was going to say, and I think the way he's handled
I
what
love
ICE
those
has
guys.
done-
They're not bad. They're not raping anyone. They work really like all day. They're the best guys.
They're a community. Wait a minute.
That was
What are
just
you
me
doing?
and my cows.
Right. So he's very unpopular among people that voted against him. I think the other thing that I would say is that Democrats need to listen to what's happening around this popular economic message and fully embrace it. I mean, people need a living wage. You know, it was Democrats in Congress when Democrats had the trifecta and they couldn't pass a minimum wage. Shame on them. Like, this is all of it coming to roost.
You think the Democratic Socialist agenda is the way forward?
Well, it's funny to call it the Democrat Socialist agenda because if you just leave the media bubble or the consulting class bubble and you just go out to Tucson, Arizona, that's just the regular way of life agenda. Can we afford childcare? Can we pay for health care? Can we have nice roads? Can we just deliver on the promise? Like, it's not radical to have, and you called me out. You said these aren't nice things. These are regular things. No one's asking to become a billionaire. They're like, can we exist? Can our
I didn't
families
call you out.
survive?
I lightly pushed back on
No,
the
I
word,
love
but-
that.
No, but I
love
know,
that's
and
what we should be doing.
And I know
right?
what you're saying, that when you ask Democratic Socialists what they believe, I think I'm to the left of them, by the way, just for the record. I don't know. But when you ask what they believe, overwhelmingly everybody in Tucson and everywhere else believes it. And by the way, they're only wanting to provide what we used to have here in some ways and what they have in other places in the world where they call themselves the happiest.
I mean, it's like an FDR agenda.
Right, but when you say socialist,
a socialist,
it scares the shit out of, quote, normal people who don't pay that attention to politics. It's a very scary word to Americans, maybe not young Americans, but to a lot of Americans who've been around for a minute and watched Rocky IV. I don't know.
Well,
They're
are you
scared.
watching the Wisconsin governor's race at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Tony
this is
Evers is the
something-
governor there, isn't he?
He's not running. He's not running, and there's a election in November.
Yeah.
There's a big primary on the Democratic side,
Okay.
and it's been fascinating to watch because there is a Democratic socialist running statewide in Wisconsin, and conventional wisdom 6 months ago was that she had no shot. She is taking on the data centers. She is doing a tax the rich agenda. She is authentic,
What's her name?
relatable, normal, and Republicans, and I think some of the Democratic consultant class are using socialism, the label, to bait people and scare them, and it's not working. So it's fascinating to say, yes, we can talk about New York City, but I just think if folks want to see a pulse of a Midwest, it's a purple state, pay attention to how
I didn't know about
the public is perceiving Democratic socialism in Wisconsin, and the jury's out, right? It's like the election hasn't happened, but
even if that
we're going to
candidate or
see
that idea
more of this.
gains ground, that was what we would call progress. But I didn't know about Wisconsin gubernatorial race, but I had paid attention to.
And there's lots of good Democrats running, so I'm like, we don't have a horse. I don't have a horse. It's just, I believe we're going to see more of this. And I think the demonization of a, quote, socialist agenda is being debunked as like, okay, Mondami's provided childcare. People want, I mean, that's one of the biggest barriers for young families and working people is the cost of childcare is often more than their rent or their mortgage.
People also love trains and buses when they work. They love them everywhere in the world. When trains and buses work, they would prefer them because driving is not as easy and as relaxing.
Well, and going back to Massachusetts millionaires tax, one of the things that 4 cents, those 4 pennies is paying for is public transit.
Sure.
And that was a big motivator for folks. They're like, oh my God, the T would run on time. And
One of the greatest
like,
things
it's amazing what we
that
can do collectively.
middle class, like we were making good money, my ex-wife and I, when we were about 30 and living in New York, had a 2-bedroom apartment that we rented in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. But we had a 2-year-old, and we could not afford the cheapest early childhood or daycare type of preschool, pre-K. And we couldn't afford it. So we had to move. Otherwise, it would have been $25,000, $30,000 for pre-K. If pre-K is paid for, then you have that money for any number of other things. You can get ahead and afford even more expensive shit. But more importantly, society wins because everybody knows that when kids have access to universal pre-K, they end up being way more smarter, successful when they're 18. Every study on early childhood education says it's the most important time in your life. That's something that Republicans, no one should be like, you should have a better job if you want to get your kid that we forced you to have into K. It's ridiculous. Every other country in the world has it, and it makes a huge difference. And I would mention Graham Plattner in Maine, and I would mention that Michigan Democratic primary between Mallory McMorrow and Abdul Saeed. There's a lot of stuff about the Middle East there in that state, obviously, in between those two. But those candidates, Saeed especially, and Graham Plattner, are running in states. We know about Maine, not a lot of melanin there or diversity there, and yet those ideas are very much popular for Mainers, I think.
Well, and if you know not you personally, but if like you look at Maine's an independent state. These are independent voters.
Oh, they hate being told what to do.
And so it's, again, if making the argument that from the outside and the non-Maine perspective that this is what Maine wants, it's to us who have been on the ground, who have partnered with folks in Maine for nearly 15 years, this is obvious. This is not a social uprising. This is meeting people actually where they're at and what they're experiencing. And I mean, we saw it in Alaska too. We went to Alaska last August. It was the biggest town hall that we had.
Really?
There were nearly 700 people in Anchorage, Alaska on their feet.
So the entire town
screaming.
was there.
Yes, it was amazing. And so these are not fringe ideas. We are speaking to people's pain points. And again, this why I'm relentlessly optimistic is like these are choices. These are choices that are being made, and if we put ourselves in the driver's seat, we can make different choices. That's it. That's all this is. The Republicans have harmed us. We need to organize. There are more of us now organized than ever before. When I started out, you couldn't say tax the rich. That was viewed as like controversial.
I remember
I was like on some consulting call, and I said, well, we should just say tax the rich. And they're like, oh no, that's offensive. Like, ooh, that'll turn off people. Now that is just so common. Like we have moved the needle in the dialogue to say, and also it's in the scale of how much greed has happened over the last 10 years too. Let's be real. Like the extraction from our tax dollars from working people to the rich. I mean, it's $1 trillion.
And it's only going to get
largest.
Far. I mean, what is AI going to do to this whole conversation, to the economy?
I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I think there's some folks who are like, this AI bubble's going to burst. I don't know. I mean,
Don't you think universal basic income is going to become way more popular as a result of AI?
It might have to. I mean, if we're really going to like farm out our labor to robots, like, I mean, it's fascinating to hear some people make the argument that once the robots are here and AI is doing all of this, we should actually be able to have more money and more time. And I think those of us are like, when has that? That's just
I don't think they're like you're gonna be able to spend so much more time in your garden with the robots doing your job.
Water. I'm like, right? Like, how are we going to water our plants? Or like, how's that going to go?
No plants or clothes.
And nothing will grow anymore in my garden because it's all been poisoned.
Now, to be fair, your garden will just be a barren wasteland, but you'll have more time in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I couldn't predict, but I think people are gonna. There's also a mindset. Regular people, people want to work and contribute. You know, like this narrative that Republicans, like, we don't want to work. People do. They don't want to work 3 jobs to make ends meet, but we're proud of work. There's dignity in contributing to our community. And so if you start stripping that away from people, and their agency and their creativity, I think we're going to have a lot of hollowed out, angry people. And I think, I don't know, that's just, I'm so anti-AI, so anti the agency that it strips. I have 5, like I said, I have 5 kids. My oldest is 30. My youngest is 9. And so I've seen how technology has impacted different generations.
Yeah, you have a good perspective.
And my 9-year-old, it is the scariest thing to see how attached he is to technology and what it has done to, and that generation in particular who have Chromebooks at school. Like, so if this is the norm and we're all going to be hollowed out shells controlled by robots, like, no, thank you. And I think most people are rising up and saying, we actually like being creators, whatever that means in whatever sector. We like contributing. And if we had a living wage, we were taxed fairly, and we had the family supports to get by, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And that's what this Republican Party has eroded specifically in the last year. And it's exactly why we're going out on the road for the next 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks to hold these people accountable and to call them out and to continue to build hope and optimism and to just say, like, no one's coming to save us. Like, we just have to save ourselves.
No, we're the ones we've been waiting for. You particularly have inspired me today in this conversation, so I'm excited to see what happens on this tour. Whatever Mara is going to be too, hopefully she'll be able to make some of those dates. A lot of listeners are big fans of hers and would love to meet her.
She's the best. She is the come hang with Maura and I. We're a good time.
Nobody better. Such a great individual. So funny, so smart, so passionate. FamiliesOverBillionaires.org, and the tour is starting on Tuesday in Portland, and for the next couple weeks through July, all these stops. I hope that listeners of this show will go meet and support and show up. That's what I
And
hope.
if you show up, come introduce yourselves and say hi to us and say you heard us here. And thank you for having me. It's great to be first-time guest, and hope I get invited back.
Yeah, I hope you didn't realize that I was AI the whole time. Did you pick up on that? I'm not even here.
You do it.
I'm actually moving. My apartment. I'm emptying my apartment right now, but this is
I
me.
mean, highly efficient.
What a handsome
robot
AI.
self.
That's what, no. You picked that for your AI. Yes, I wanted to look like an old sea captain. Families Over Billionaires, Kristen Crowell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
This is really, really great. I'm very inspired to hear you, and happy that you're leading this amazing and important organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Well, there you go. Families Over Billionaires. Kristen Crowell, go check them out. They're on every social media platform, familiesoverbillionaires.org. See them on the bus tour. Meet Mara if you can. And that is all I've got for you. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. I can't do it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Go support John Carroll at johncarroll.org. He writes and performs all the music and all of the rest of our creative listeners and followers and supporters and friends of the stand-up community. If you need help, if you need support, if you need friends, join up with us. Hang out with us on Thursday nights, anytime on the Discord platform, in-person gatherings, and more. Check out patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Join up, and you'll get the email with all the information, including a shot of vitamin N every day. That's it. I'm out. Bye-bye.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach you, better stand up, stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up, stand up. I think your driving wheels been leaking grease, boy, you better stand up, stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up, that's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and